Hello, everybody. Welcome and thank you for joining us for today's National Alzheimer's and Dementia Resource webinar series, sponsored by the Administration for Community Living and hosted by the American Society on Aging. My name is Julia Burrows. I'm a program coordinator with ASA. We will be getting started in just a moment. The slides are available for today's presentation under the Resource tab located on your screen. There's also a tab labeled CE Applications here. You'll find information on how to obtain CE credit for today's event. You have 60 days to complete a continuing education application, and it may take us up to 30 days to process your application and to issue your CE credits. If you are not logged in directly to this webinar, that is if you're watching as part of a group and did not log in using an individualized confirmation URL, you will not be eligible for CEUs as we have no way of tracking your online attendance. If you would like those CEU credits, please make sure you watch under your own confirmed URL. If you have any questions during today's presentation, you can send those to us at any time using the questions box. We will save the last 10 to 15 minutes of today's program to get to those questions. I'd now like to turn it over to today's moderator, Sari Schumann of the National Alzheimer's and Dementia Resource Center.
Great, thank you so much, and thank you everyone for joining us today for the National Alzheimer's and Dementia Resource Center webinar, Dementia Training for Law Enforcement Personnel, Building Partnerships to Enhance Community Safety. The National Alzheimer's and Dementia Resource Center webinar series is supported by the Administration for Community Living. Before we start, Erin Long of the Administration for Community Living will provide a brief welcome. Erin?
Hi, everyone. Just want to welcome you to the webinar hosted by the NADRC and funded by ACL. We are super excited on this very important topic and want to thank Amy Abrams from Alzheimer's San Diego, who received a grant from ACL to do much of this work, and Monica Cordero from San Diego Sheriff's Department, who is conducting a lot of the work down the road. So look forward to hearing everything they have to teach us. And with that, I'll give it back to you, Sari. Thanks.
Thank you so much. As you heard, today's presenters are Amy Abrams and Monica Cordero. Amy Abrams has worked in the field of long-term care in San Diego for more than 20 years in care management, dementia care, and community health education. Ms. Abrams serves as the Director of Education for Alzheimer's San Diego, a local nonprofit organization with the mission of helping people affected by dementia, fighting stigma, and supporting research. Monica Cordero also joins us today. She has worked in law enforcement for 7 years as an emergency services dispatcher, community services officer, and now as a crime prevention specialist for the San Diego Sheriff's Department. Ms. Cordero now works in the Financial Crimes and Elder Abuse Unit, informing the public on scams as well as coordinating the county-wide Take Me Home program. I'll now turn the presentation over to Amy Abrams to begin.
Hi, thank you so much. Let me see if I'm going to get my slides advancing properly. Great, we're all set. Thank you very much for the introduction, the welcome, and of course for inviting us to speak on this very important topic. As you heard, part of what we're going to be talking about here today, many of the activities were supported by a recent ACL grant in a project that we called the Law Enforcement Referral Program, or LERP. But I will also be addressing some relationship building and continued collaboration that has taken place outside of the scope of that particular project. However, we're very grateful for the support. So here you can see an image of our very large county here in Southern California, this most southern of the Southern California counties. We are approximately 4,500 square miles here in San Diego County, bordered by Orange and Imperial counties, and of course the U.S.-Mexico border. Our region is 2 very large metropolitan statistical areas, including one that crosses the San Diego-Tijuana border. And all told, there are close to 3.3 million residents here in San Diego County. Notably, we also have 18 tribal reservations, and that is more than any other county in the United States. That those regions and their law enforcement entities play an important role in our region as well. Something that a lot of folks who aren't familiar with our county don't realize is just how much rural and unincorporated mountainous and desert regions we have here in San Diego County. And that actually plays a significant role in the dementia-specific needs that we have here locally. So on the screen, I've provided the most recent statistics from our county public health department regarding the numbers here in our county. We've got close to 100,000 people that we know of living with a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease or related dementia. It's currently the third leading cause of death here among San Diego County residents who are age 65 and older. And of course, there are hundreds of thousands, 250,000 plus, that have been identified, family members and other unpaid dementia caregivers and care partners. Wandering is a specific regional concern that we have here in San Diego County because of the extensive amount of inhospitable terrain. That is, there's ocean, there's desert, there's mountains, and then of course there is an international border. Wandering across the border is actually something that happens with more frequency than many realize. So when most of us think of, quote, law enforcement, we tend to think of a few pretty specific types of agencies. Usually, depending on where you are, that's the police or the sheriff's department. And we don't tend to think too far beyond that. But I think that one of the reasons that our local collaboration here in San Diego County has been so effective is this wide range of entities that we call law enforcement. They are law enforcement who've been involved in our project. So you can see, if you're able to see on the screen, I've got a list here. Not all of the agencies that are included here have been trained or involved in our program, at least not yet. But I want to provide you with this range of examples of the types of entities that are considered law enforcement that you might not have considered in your own region. So we've got our sheriff's department. We've got 9 regional police departments. There's tribal law enforcement. There are numerous volunteer-based patrols, senior volunteer patrols, as well as our search and rescue team. We've got our highway patrol. Then there are the offices of the city attorney, the county district attorney, and a variety of other types of first responders. We've got, of course, like any region, fire departments, our Metropolitan Transit District security, the folks who work security on our buses and our trolley system, for example. And then, like anywhere, we also have federal law enforcement agencies here in San Diego County. So in addition to working with these various law enforcement agencies, Alzheimer's San Diego has developed a very strong, very positive, and close working relationship with an entity called PERT, our Psychiatric Emergency Response Team. Here in San Diego County, PERT consists of licensed mental health clinicians who are paired with specially trained law enforcement officers and paramedics. And together, they interact with people who are experiencing a behavioral health crisis who've come to the attention of a public safety agency. So PERT, as you can imagine, does a lot, in addition to these various law enforcement agencies, there's a lot of intervening with people who are having dementia-related crises. So all of these various agencies are, or we hope will soon be, a part of our project here in San Diego County. So early on, we spent some time interviewing our contacts at several local law enforcement agencies to solicit their thoughts, their ideas, their feedback about what their challenges were, what their needs are in the way of dementia-specific training and support. So you can see here, I've listed for you here the key takeaways, the key needs that were identified. We want to better understand and support the needs of the communities they serve more broadly. Of course, this is an initiative and endeavor that law enforcement entities everywhere are undertaking in earnest right now. They want to empower their officers and their clinicians who identify people who are living with dementia and their care partners who are in crisis and solve those problems proactively. We have a wandering response program here in San Diego County called Take Me Home that you'll be hearing about in some detail here shortly. And getting people enrolled in those wandering response programs is a key need. Those programs are only as effective as the number of people that are enrolled in them. And this is a source of a lot of frustration and energy being expended. So we really want to support our local law enforcement in getting people enrolled, knowing about and getting enrolled in wandering response programs. Of course, the key element that the training program addresses: disease information, communication techniques, de-escalation techniques. Those two, communication and de-escalation in particular, came up often in these conversations. And then, of course, there's what happens on the other end, the expert consultation, getting ongoing support and having community resources that these folks can refer the public to when they get involved in a crisis. So kind of drilling down a little bit, focusing in on these two topic areas, the specific needs that we uncovered are listed here. So there are driving-related incidents, moving violations, traffic stops, if you will, theft, suspected theft or actual theft, but in moments of confusion or paranoia, a person with dementia believing that they have been the victim of theft is a common example we're given. Various types of domestic violence, domestic disputes, incidents between people who are living with dementia and their care partners, not just intimate partners, but other familial and domestic relationships as well. Shoplifting, right, engaging in erratic, forgetful behavior in a commercial business, engaging in illegal behavior with or without knowledge of having done so, variety of different types of uninhibited, inappropriate, or potentially unsafe behaviors, and then, of course, wandering. So studies show us that missing persons with Alzheimer's disease who require law enforcement assistance and were found alive, about 60% were found within the first 6 hours. So having a strong wandering response program in place in a region and providing extensive training on how to intervene effectively is key. So here for your reference are the objectives that we developed for that LERP, the Law Enforcement Referral Program that I mentioned before, of which the development of a standard dementia training curriculum was an integral part. So you can see them here: increased dementia-related knowledge among law enforcement and related professionals, increased awareness and access to Alzheimer's disease and related dementia resources, information and support for law enforcement and related professionals, improve the support that's available to families and people who are living with dementia and affected by dementia who are referred by law enforcement and related professionals, and then to evaluate the effectiveness of this training. These were our primary objectives in the program. So here's what we did in terms of developing the dementia training curriculum itself. What we found to be the real key to the success of these training programs was the flexibility, the adaptability of it. What we did was we created these flexible training modules that could be adapted to a specific unit or department's needs. Law enforcement entities vary so widely in terms of the amount of time that they can dedicate to training, the venue, the format for the training, and of course the particular needs and perspectives of the officers or agents that are being trained. So coming up with a general template was the key. We created this modular program that has various options. If you had 30 minutes, 60 minutes, 90 minutes, or one time we even got a full 2 hours, but that's rare. We had various modifications that we could make to the program to contract or expand it as needed. Of course, this program took place over the span of the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. When we began, we were doing all of these programs in person. About halfway through, of course, like many, we shifted to an all virtual, all online remote training program. So by the end, we had both in-person and online options available for this curriculum. Strong dementia training addresses the various different types of learning styles in a given room, no matter who it is, law enforcement or any type of audience. And something we learned is that video in particular really helped to address the various learning styles of a wide array of trainees, people who are visual, audio learners, people who are more experiential. Video, whether it was in person or being conducted online, turned out to be a very effective way of teaching, as was group discussion, always needed to be incorporated. Much more challenging in online environments, but still possible, depending upon the platform and the format. And then pre and post-training evaluation to make sure that we were meeting our training objectives. So the topic areas that are covered in each of these modular trainings are listed here. So there is a pretty comprehensive review of Alzheimer's disease and frontotemporal dementia in particular. When we review disease basics overall, we don't tend to go into the weeds on the various types of dementia. We focus on the two that they're most likely to see. Notably, statistically speaking, of course, Alzheimer's disease is the most common type of dementia, but in terms of interactions, the most common encounters that law enforcement have with people living with dementia, many folks are living with Alzheimer's disease, but there's actually a lot of interaction happening with people with younger onset forms of dementia and specifically the frontotemporal type of dementia. So we learned fairly early on in the program that spending a little extra time describing frontotemporal dementia in particular, as well as Alzheimer's disease, was of great value, an important learning for us. We covered techniques for effective communication, intervention, and de-escalation. Teaching law enforcement in just a few minutes, being able to teach law enforcement those key communication techniques like validation, redirection as a form of de-escalation was key. We got a lot of feedback that was very valuable part of the training for them. Safety concerns, helping them identify people with dementia who live alone and being aware of the key safety concerns that affect them. And then, of course, what to do about that. Making sure that law enforcement is aware of the local support and resources that are available to the people they're interacting with who are living with dementia and their care partners. So to that end, some key materials and resources were developed to support this training program. Of course, the PowerPoint slide deck, we had a 60-minute template for both in-person and online trainings that was made up of about 20 slides that, again, could be modified for shorter or longer presentations, for inserting additional videos, or incorporating more case studies and discussion as time allowed. Two specific videos that we generally included. One, we always include the What is Alzheimer's Disease video that is available at aboutalz.org. A short 3 or 4 minute video that gives a nice introduction to the pathology and typical progression of the Alzheimer's type of dementia. And then our colleagues at Alzheimer's Orange County developed a series of law enforcement training videos. I'll tell you more about these here in a moment, that can also be inserted. Clips, they're free and available to anybody, and they can be inserted into training to great effect. We created a double-sided tip sheet for law enforcement that was called Responding to People with Dementia, that provided A simple summary of all of the key concepts covered in the training. And then, of course, we would connect people to Alzheimer's San Diego program materials, brochures, business cards, and materials regarding the Take Me Home Wandering Response program that you'll hear about here in a moment. Another important resource we created was an online referral form, making it very simple for law enforcement to connect people to Alzheimer's San Diego directly. So via phone call, via fax, or as was our preference, and as it turns out was theirs as well, an online referral form that you can find at alzsd.org/referral. So here you see just little thumbnails of those really terrific training videos for law enforcement that were created by our colleagues at Alzheimer's Orange County. These are viewable, free, and available on their website at the URL alzoc.org/professionals/training. Give some great examples of a traffic stop, a wandering incident, a domestic dispute, and a house call related to a suspected robbery. So the feedback we've received over time from law enforcement personnel is that videos and discussions about real life scenarios that attendees have dealt with really helped to reinforce their learning. So arguably the greatest challenge when it comes to the development of a local law enforcement training program is not the training itself, it's getting people there, doing the outreach and the scheduling. So what we found to be effective was just keep knocking on the doors, making regular requests for contact with local law enforcement agencies and other first responders, following up with an agency after any interaction or intervention that a member of our clinical services team at Alzheimer's San Diego was a part of. If they were interacting with a family that had an interaction with law enforcement, they would look for opportunities to follow up with them and offer support and training. Identifying those Identifying internal champions within law enforcement agencies was also key. Somebody who attended one training tended to be very helpful in providing us with support and assistance in getting us connected to other departments within the agency, for example. Very practical and common sense, but maintaining an easy to update contact list turned out to be really important. And we also really benefited from a community collaboration that we developed called the county's Alzheimer's Safety Work Group. Listed here on the slide are the names of the local entities that were and are a part of our ALZ Safety Work Group, our Sheriff's Department, members of regional police departments, various police departments, our PERT program, our DA's office, our local AAA, our Adult Protective Services, and folks from our transit district as well. So convening the ALZ Safety Work Group on a regular basis really helped to facilitate all of this outreach and scheduling, just staying in close contact with all of these folks. And of course, we don't just train law enforcement, we also provide the ongoing support. So connecting members of the public who are interacting with law enforcement because of a dementia-related incident is naturally the primary objective of this program. So building the internal capacity to respond to those referrals, while it's not the focus of what I'm discussing here today, it's a critical component of an effective training program. So there's the training itself of law enforcement, getting materials out there, teaching them how to refer to us, helping them identify who's appropriate, and then doing all of our own internal training as an agency, making sure that our clinical services team was going to be sort of ready and knowledgeable about the program, what types of referrals might be coming in, building that internal capacity. And listed here are the key types of client support that we provided when law enforcement made referrals to us at Alzheimer's San Diego: case consultation, resource and referral, telephonic support, home visits and home safety evaluations when they were possible pre-pandemic, and supportive counseling services. So right behind scheduling the trainings, I'd say the getting participation with pre and post training evaluation was probably our second greatest challenge in developing and this collaboration and ongoing program. So we are very grateful to the evaluators at the Benjamin Rose Institute on Aging that worked with us on this project and helped us create some really flexible solutions for pre and post evaluation. We had both paper and digital formats of our surveys. We had pre and post training evaluations, but we're flexible, and there were times that we weren't going to get pre-training evaluation completed, so we had a post-only version of that survey. We were able to collect information on demographics, job characteristics, dementia experience, and then rate, using components of the Alzheimer's disease knowledge scale, rate changes in their subjective and objective dementia knowledge. We also evaluated their satisfaction with the training and how, whether or not their knowledge of community resources was deepened through the training. So later in the webinar here, I'll provide you with a brief summary of our evaluation results. But for now, I will turn things over to Monica.
Hi, everyone. This is Monica. So I'm from the San Diego Sheriff's Department, so I'll kind of provide that little aspect and that side of everything. But for the first few slides that I'll be speaking about, I'll be talking about the Take Me Home program, which is kind of home here with the Sheriff's Department here in San Diego. So essentially, the Take Me Home program, it's a voluntary registry intended to serve people with special needs and or medical conditions that could increase their safety in public. So members of this group of people who could be signed up would be people who are not easily able to identify themselves or provide accurate information to first responders about their immediate needs, should they need that help. And this could be things such as their name, their address, contact information for loved ones who could help them, or even any other sort of special needs that they might have. So some information that is provided to the Take Me Home program when a loved one is signing their loved one up definitely will be simple things such as their name, things about how they look, their height, weight, hair color, eye color, things like that, their address. But we do also ask some special considerations that there might be. So this could be information such as if the person is combative, if they disrobe, or pervert nudity, if they have a fear of dogs, or light or noise sensitive, because that could be information that is vital when it comes to law enforcement coming to assist them. If they're light sensitive, we definitely will know not to be using our lights. If they're noise sensitive, we won't be coming up with our sirens and things like that. And the list is just is very long because every single person is very different. So anything that could be added can definitely be added in that sense. We also do ask for a photo of the individual, and this typically looks like a passport photo, just something simple of their head, plain background, and we do ask that be updated annually. The Take Me Home program helps with people with Alzheimer's and dementia, but also is not limited to just those those two types of disabilities. We also have assisted many people with autism, brain injuries, Down syndrome, things like that as well. So especially when children are included in the registry, it's great to have an updated annual photo because children change almost daily, it seems sometimes. Additional information would be contact information for a loved one, so mother, father, son, daughter, whatever, whoever the contact is. We would have their information, such as address, email address, phone number, and things like that. And especially when it comes to Alzheimer's and dementia, we also ask for vehicle information if that is pertinent, because like Amy mentioned with the early onset, they may still have access or be able to drive a vehicle, so that information is good to know in case they do wander or get lost. We will know what sort of vehicle to look for out in the streets when our deputies are checking out the areas. So some of the project benefits for the Take Me Home program definitely are going to be just to safeguard those who need a little bit of extra care. By being registered in the program, law enforcement is able to easily bring up this person's profile and see all this information that I just mentioned. So this definitely cuts down time on getting that information and disseminating it to all the law enforcement officers and needed people out in the field looking for them. So it's a speedy return of lost or at-risk clients, because the main goal in that is to get them home safely and as quickly as possible. I was going to share a little story about an incident that occurred in Imperial Beach, but I'm going to change it up to one that actually occurred in Poway, because I remembered this one the other day, and I think it's a little bit more relevant. So last year, early last year in Poway, which is one of our contracted cities with the San Diego Sheriff's Department, we received a call from a woman who had been driving around the city, and she noticed that there was an elderly gentleman walking around, and he appeared to be confused. So what she did was she stopped and she asked him, "Hello, are you okay? Can I get you any help?" And he was able to express to her that he didn't know where his house was, and he seemed a little lost. So what she did immediately was she called the Sheriff's Department. She called 911 and told the dispatcher that she had found this gentleman, was trying to assist him, but that our assistance was needed as well. So our deputies went out there to try to ask him some questions. Oftentimes maybe they look through a wallet, see if there's information there. And if not, they were able to actually get his first name, because he did remember his first name, luckily. And they were able to go into our Take Me Home database, search that first name, come up with a short list of everybody with that first name, and kind of determine who he couldn't be and who he possibly was. So they could whittle it down a little bit to all the cases, all the registered people in maybe the Poway area or that immediate vicinity. And ultimately, they were able to find that he did have a Take Me Home registry, and we had all of his information there. We had his address, his contact information for his loved ones, who in turn we turned around and called them, and they quickly came out to the location where the gentleman was, and we were able to reunite them quickly. So that's just one of our success stories. We do have several from throughout the years, and from all different sorts of aspects of finding lost people and getting them home. So another project benefit would be the speedy return of law enforcement personnel to other tasks. So if we're able to turn around and get that person home within 20 minutes, whereas years ago when this program wasn't available, it could have taken hours or even longer than that. So that just allows personnel to turn around and go on to the next calls for service that are in the queue that are next to be handled. Another benefit would be that this is regional access. So all law enforcement agencies within San Diego County have access to the database. So while it is ran by the Sheriff's Department, that just means that we take care of the program itself. And also our IT department does amazing work. They are the ones who actually maintain the program, like when it comes to their side of things. So we just run it and we make sure everything's going great for the entire county, but all other law enforcement agencies have access to that information and have access to enter people if needed. So those are just some of the benefits that we have. And there are countless many, but those are just a few. So how the Take Me Home program came to be in San Diego starts with this gentleman. His name is Brian Harrett, and this adorable little boy here is Brian Harrett Jr., so who's also known as Little Brian. So for the sake of this little story, I'll call the father Big Brian, and then I'll call Little Brian Little Brian. So Big Brian was a law enforcement officer here in San Diego, and he has his son who has autism. So he would notice that Little Brian every once in a while would kind of leave his house, but many people in the neighborhood knew who he was, so they were able to help him get back home, notify his parents, and things like that. But he started to wonder as Little Brian got older and started looking more and more like a grown adult man, he became very tall, that he wished law enforcement maybe had a little bit of information about Little Brian prior to maybe encountering him on the street, because Little Brian had certain tendencies where he wasn't very verbal with people and things like that. And some of his tendencies could maybe look as if he were maybe on drugs while he wasn't, but it could be perceived that way, especially to law enforcement who go out to different calls and don't know exactly what is happening. So Big Brian did some research and found that there are programs throughout the country that are similar to Take Me Home. He ended up getting in touch with the Sheriff's Department and then also a department in Florida who has a program just like this. Got us all talking, and we ended up bringing that program from that agency and bringing it over here to San Diego. We did make some tweaks that would make it a little bit more beneficial for San Diego County, because we do, like Amy mentioned, have some things that make it a little bit different than other cities and things of the sort from the rest of the country. So all that happened about 12 years ago, and we've just slowly been trying to grow the program since then. But the program was never just intended for kids with autism. It's intended for anybody that this may help. So clearly we have a huge need for Alzheimer's and dementia, people who live with that daily, that this could benefit, and it absolutely does. Okay, so on this slide, I do have a little video for you guys, and this is just a quick 2-minute video that'll kind of give a little bit more background, and you'll just be able to see the family who started it. So if we could go ahead and start that video, please.
Okay? Got it? My name is Brian Harrett. This little guy here is Little Brian Harrett. We affectionately call him Little B. Can you say hello? Hello. And this over here is my daughter Isabella. He was diagnosed at 2 years old as having severe low-functioning autism. He's since been diagnosed with epilepsy as well. He definitely knows what's going on in the world around him, and he's much smarter than I think we all think he is. Good job! Good job, buddy! I actually get teary-eyed when I watch him play both sports. He loves to play with his little sister. They are definitely the Bonnie and Clyde of our household. He's just a very happy kid.
He's just an awesome brother. He loves me. When I get hurt, he'll come to me. It's okay, and he'll hug me, and he'll pretend I'm his baby. He literally says I'm his baby sometimes. It's fun.
And after that incident, talking with my wife and thinking about it, we realized that there was really a need to let local first responders know about Brian, and we wanted to make sure they knew about him and his needs and his special needs, so if they ever encountered him, they would have some knowledge going in. Oh, baby. An officer named Jimmy Donahoe in Florida came up with the name. He allows other agencies to use the name, so the Sheriff's Department liked the name Take Me Home, so do I. So we use that. Ours is a little bit different than the Florida version. The San Diego County version, from what I've heard as described by other professionals, is the best version out there, I guess, so to speak.
And it's a program whereby caregivers or loved ones can register their individuals that have special needs, whether it be autism, Down syndrome, Alzheimer's, deaf, blind, or any other developmental disabilities. They can register in there, and they can give us critical information that they want us to know in case they should ever have to call 911 or a deputy should ever encounter that individual in the field.
We owe it to our kids, we owe it to those loved ones to keep them safe. This is a program that's been made, that the Sheriff's Department, that all of the county law enforcement agencies are putting their resources to make sure that they're safe. We need to do our part.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go on to the next slide. So our partnership with Alzheimer's San Diego, I would say I think it's about 6 or 7 years ago now that we started partnering with Alzheimer's San Diego. When they came about, they have been extremely vital when it came to our Take Me Home program. They get the word out there and vice versa. We just kind of help each other out in both of our goals. So they're also a sense of additional boots on the ground. So when I say that, I mean we have additional people out there who know about the program and who are able to refer it to other people who are actually in need of the program. Our sheriff's deputies and other officers may not encounter people daily, but they do. So they're able to let them know about the program, that this may be a benefit to them. Some additional things with our partnership, definite positives have been that we work together, and some amazing people from Alzheimer's San Diego have worked on getting federal grants that in turn have also helped the program. So I'll take this as an example. The picture right here on the front is a picture of our pamphlet that we do provide to people, letting them know about the program. When we first came up with the program, we did our pamphlet in-house, and it did have a large sheriff's star on the front of the logo, and it just described exactly what the Take Me Home program was. But some of the drawbacks to that is that we noticed some other agencies realizing, like, oh, hey, this looks like it's a sheriff's department program. We're not going to necessarily promote it. So through one of the grants and in partnership with Alzheimer's San Diego, we were able to redesign the pamphlet so that you can see the one that's right here on the screen. It's a little bit more friendly into the eye. It shows you exactly what it is. It shows the main Take Me Home logo. It only has our information on there when it comes to the website that you need to go to register your loved one, which is the Sheriff's Department website. But we tried to take out the Sheriff's Department aspect just so it applies to everyone in the county, so that people who also don't live in Sheriff's jurisdiction will know that this is a program for them as well. So that's definitely been a great aspect of our partnership. We also work together on creating events. I know that, like Amy mentioned, with the COVID times, it's been a little bit more difficult, but we're definitely going to get back on board with that. But events that we're trying to put in place are going to be actual live events where people can bring their loved ones and sign them up in person. A few of us crime prevention specialists will be having computers out so we can just straight up create the registration for them right there, then and there, give them the registration number, and they'll be on their way and ready to go already in the system. So it's events like that that we're looking to create a little bit more in the future, especially when COVID kind of starts dying down a little bit more than it has. So definitely our partnership with Alzheimer's San Diego has been extremely beneficial. So from the perspective of the trainee, when it comes to law enforcement being the trainee about Alzheimer's and dementia from Alzheimer's San Diego, there are a huge amount of positives, and these kind of reflect things that Amy was talking about earlier. We do receive updated disease information, communication training, and the de-escalation techniques are extremely vital. Deputies do go through post-training, so that's a minimal amount of training that they're supposed to be getting through peace officer standards and training. So they do receive some minor training on dementia and things like that, but this is just an additional resource that we have on training when it comes to that. Another positive would be that this training is also for both sworn, which are the deputies or officers, and professional staff. So those are people like myself. So I'm a professional staff in which I'm not sworn, I'm not a deputy, but I work in the office and with the public. So it's beneficial for all of us to get that sort of training as well, because there are often times that we come encounter with people and this training can be a benefit to us as well. So as an example, this could be people who work the front office at all the stations. They encounter dozens, if not hundreds of people every day throughout in the front office. People in my position, we go out and talk to the public. We do presentations. We do booths where we go and talk to the public and educate them on how not to become victims. But we also talk about the Take Me Home program. So having that one-on-one training about the de-escalation techniques and communication training can be vital to us out there in the field as well. Also, a deeper understanding of how and why some behaviors arise from the diagnosis. Again, it's just easier to know. We may have some personnel in the department who have personal experience with someone with Alzheimer's or dementia, but there are others who do not. So as long as we're exposed to the different behaviors and why they do things and things like that, it helps us to understand what is happening in the moment and how we can go about it to make it a positive encounter. And they have just so many additional resources to offer the community. So this adds to our little pocketbook of resources that we can provide to the community. Because when we work together, it's just more information sharing is the best. in order to get people the resources that they need. And Amy mentioned some of these as well, but the challenges for us are going to be to reach all employees due to a wide variety of work schedules that we have. So we have our sworn officers who work shift work. Some work at night, some work in the day, swing shifts, all the way to professional staff who work normal business hours, some on weekends, and things like that. So that is definitely one of the challenges. Also, employee turnover can be a bit of a challenge. And not necessarily turnover that they leave, but more turnover when it comes to promotions. So we have promotions going on all the time, meaning people who are in a deputy one day, maybe a sergeant the next day, or may move from one station to another station. So there are constant needs for this sort of training to keep people just aware of everything. And then also COVID-19 kind of ruins a lot of things, but it temporarily halted the in-person training. I know me personally, I'm definitely more of I like to go to training in person because I'm more visual and I like to see people. I like to see the presentations in person, videos, things like that. So that's definitely a benefit to me personally. But having the training as an option online is definitely the next best thing because we always have access to that. So that's just a little bit on the perspective of the trainee. But like I mentioned, the Take Me Home program helps everybody across the board. And people with Alzheimer's dementia, this is definitely a wonderful program that helps them and their families in the long run. And I will pass this on to Amy.
Thank you, Monica. So I really appreciate that you can hear directly the law enforcement perspective before I wrap up and talk about the outcomes of this program. You don't have to just take it from me or just from the data. So all told, throughout the law enforcement referral program, we conducted about 30 trainings that were delivered to nearly 1,000 local law enforcement and related professionals. And truthfully, we still only scratched the surface. We have a lot more to go, but we made a good dent, I would say. We received lots of positive feedback, good evaluation results, and as you heard from Monica, we were able to redevelop and translate those Take Me Home registry materials and enhance our referral procedures related to Take Me Home, as well as the relationships between other law enforcement and Alzheimer's San Diego. It really elevated our partnerships all around, and ultimately, I believe we've created a stronger support network for people who are living with dementia in San Diego County and their caregivers. I will be very brief here. You do have access to our handouts, so you can review these evaluation results in more detail on your own. But what you can see from the numbers, from the questions that were asked, and from the summaries that are provided here is that participants in the law enforcement dementia training typically came away feeling more prepared to encounter an older adult or another person who's living with dementia. They typically felt that further training in dementia and related cognitive disorders was important, and they did feel more knowledgeable. Somewhat knowledgeable to knowledgeable was the typical rating when it came to Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. So our thanks again for being able to our professional evaluators for allowing us to capture some of that data. So our key lessons learned, really understand your local law enforcement landscape and stay in close contact. There is a lot of turnover is not quite the right word, but something we learned about law enforcement agencies is that there's just a lot of movement in terms of positions changing and people moving into different departments. So you have to maintain very close contact in order to not lose your champions, lose track of them, or figure out who are, in fact, the training managers and the training coordinators. As you've heard, flexibility is absolutely the key. Having staff who are able to shorten training when needed, show up at 4 a.m. at a shift change, 20 miles away. Being flexible with regard to your format, the time of day, the location is absolutely critical. That need for knowledge about younger onset and non-Alzheimer's dementia was a very key takeaway for us, and something that we really are emphasizing going forward in law enforcement training curriculum. Developing that online referral procedure, I'd say we really underestimated, I would say, just how online law enforcement officers really are. So they, right there from their patrol cars, they can make referrals to us using our website, something we really had not anticipated would happen as often as it does. I mentioned staff capacity, having additional members of my education department trained and ready to haul across the county and go do a stand-up training when we had an opportunity, and of course training our clinical services team to provide that support. One very interesting takeaway was just to remember that law enforcement officers are also human beings who care and love and care about people who are living with dementia in their own lives as well, and that in these trainings, we needed to come prepared for their personal interest in this topic. Somebody sort of approaching you after a training to ask about something going on in their own personal family life or neighborhood. So another really important and pleasant lesson that was learned, I would say. Here in summary is just a timeline of that project. So LERP, as you can see, wrapped up in May of 2021, but Alzheimer's San Diego and the Take Me Home Voluntary Registry Program, our partnership has been around for about 8 years, as Monica indicated, and it goes on, as does our ongoing implementation of dementia training in the law enforcement community. So we have continued to offer this program and found additional funding sources to help us keep free law enforcement training available here in our county. We have expanded our partnerships. We continue the All Safety Work Group meetings and doing additional community outreach as we can as a result of that additional funding. We now are offering regular online training dates that are open to anybody. We don't necessarily have to go out to a specific agency to do training. We still can, and we still will, but we also are able to offer quarterly online law enforcement training that's available to anybody. So that has been a really nice expansion of this program for us, doing more community dementia education, educating on the family side of this, right? Helping people understand safety issues, helping people understand Take Me Home as a wandering response resource, and of course, all of the other critical dementia education and support that we provide in our regular daily course of business at Alzheimer's San Diego. Developing that internal capacity, train trainers, helping people at PERT and other law enforcement agencies be better equipped to offer dementia training internally is something we're focusing on going forward. And post-certification is something Monica mentioned briefly, the Peace Officer Standards and Training. So each state has a commission on post. It looks different everywhere, but get in touch with your state commission on Peace Officer Standards and Training. This is the entity that certifies trainers and curricula for various law enforcement agencies. And if you get post-certified, you are your members of your agency, then you are able to offer post-certified training to officers in your region. And we talked, Monica mentioned the public safety events that we have ongoing, which we're very pleased to be able to offer. So here we are. This is our contact information, and I'm going to turn things back over to our moderators so we can take any questions that we have time for.
Great. Thank you so much, Amy and Monica, for fantastic presentations. Quite a few questions have come in. You can put more questions into the chat if you would like. I did want to start with a question that came in about diverse groups, marginalized populations about in relationship to the training, Amy. 2 questions came in asking if the training mentions or talks specifically about guidelines or tips for working with people who are from diverse communities, marginalized communities, so that those aspects of each person that they encounter are taken into account.
Great question. And no, I can't say that our dementia training does cover those things, regrettably. I do know that post-training, and perhaps Monica can speak to that, but post-training itself more broadly does cover those training issues. But ours that we offer through Alzheimer's San Diego is focused specifically on sort of communication and behavioral responses. So really interesting point.
Okay, great. Thank you. So another question that came in about Take Me Home is asking about people who are nonverbal, unable to identify themselves. How does that work? People are asking, how do you work with a person who is nonverbal or combative that is found in the community? What does the training look like around that? Monica, do you want to touch on that?
When it comes, yeah, the training when it comes to them. Well, all of our deputies and officers have training when they go through the academy. So they do have little portions of a de-escalation, of trying to figure out ways to communicate with them as well. They might also bring in PERT if that is needed as well. But there are different ways around it, and the Take Me Home program is intended so that we can better understand this person and what their needs might be, so that de-escalation can happen and we can find a better way and an easier way to communicate with them to get them what they need.
Great, thank you so much. So another question came in about the focus on frontotemporal degeneration and early onset. Can you talk a little bit about how you knew that it was important to focus on those specific populations? Were the reports from law enforcement about those? Were there data that you've been collecting? Can you talk a little bit more about that, Amy?
Yes, absolutely. So today I was focusing specifically on the training side of things in the LERP program, but with lots of credit to our clinical services team. Yes, all of the encounters that our staff had with law enforcement or families who were referred by law enforcement were well documented throughout this program, so that we were able to pretty quickly and clearly detect those patterns in the types of referrals that were coming in. So that's how we knew fairly early on that, a lot of these much more than we expected, a lot of these encounters are related to people with young onset and frontotemporal dementia.
Great, thank you so much. Another question came in to ask, do you recommend Take Me Home enrollment for anyone living with dementia or only those who wander? And if you could just address that briefly, that would be great. We have just 1 minute left.
Sure. Yeah,
I can take that.
Speak from. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah. We actually recommend it for anybody, even if somebody hasn't wandered. You never know when that might happen. So even just taking this little a little bit of time to put them in the program is just beneficial at the very beginning.
Great, thank you. Amy, do you want to add anything to that?
Nope, I would echo that exactly. We advocate anybody who's living with memory loss in any stage and in any setting, not just in the home, but even people who are living in residential care settings. We encourage everybody to enroll. Yes.
Great, thank you so much. So that's all the time we have for questions today. I want to thank you again to both presenters for this excellent presentation. And I want to let everyone know that you are welcome to join us for our next National Alzheimer's and Dementia webinar on March 31st, entitled Beyond One Size Fits All, Addressing the Needs of People Living with Dementia and Their Caregivers in Asian American and Persian American Communities. At this time, I'll turn it back to Julia Burrows for some final remarks.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Amy and Monica, your passion for the program clearly comes through, and it's so much great information shared today. We really appreciate your time. Again, if you would like to claim CEUs for today's webinar, you will be receiving a follow-up email by the end of the business day that will contain a link to the CEU application. Again, you have 60 days to complete that application, and it may take up to 30 days for us to process it. We hope to see you or hear you all join us soon. Thank you so much. Take care.